Welcome to the Franchise Founders Podcast, where you'll hear right from the source how people like you have been able to buy and build their businesses across different industries all over the country. Dan Claps is the co-founder of Career Transition Leads, Nurture Assist, and Find a Business Online. Christian Dadulak is a franchise consultant with Find a Business Online, and he heads up business development for Career Transition Leads and Nurture Assist. He also runs an independent franchise consulting business, The Franchise Guys. Together, they formed relationships with hundreds of successful business owners who are excited to share their stories with you. Now here are your hosts, Dan and Christian.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Franchise Founders Podcast. Dan Claps here with my co-host, Christian Dadulak. Hey, Christian, how are you?
How's it going, guys?
Good. And joining us as well, really excited about this episode, we've got our guest, Adam Rice, the founder and CEO of one of the number one emerging boutique fitness brands in the country, ISI Elite Training, and has been in the fitness industry for over 10 years. Adam's married to his wife, Tristan. Together, they have 3 children. And Adam started ISI back in 2013, began the franchising journey in 2019, and currently has 19 open facilities and is set to double in size in Q4 of 2022. They've awarded 80 territories and are quickly spreading across the country. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, I think a good place to start is just to get a little bit of background on you, in addition to kind of what we covered. But, what's your story, Adam? How did you get into franchising? Why fitness? Can you take us through that journey?
Yeah, you bet. So really trails back to, I think, two-sided. Number one, I've always been kind of an entrepreneur. I was the kid who was at the lemonade stand, and I was also the kid selling fake Jordans in high school. So importing them from China. But and I told people they were fake, by the way. So don't think wrong there. But no, man, we was a fat kid growing up too. So really those two things. I always battled weight, was an athlete growing up though, and went to a camp at the University of Iowa. I grew up in Iowa and wanted to play college baseball. Coach essentially told me I was too fat to play, in a nice way though, right? And I think the wording he used was I was a liability on the base paths. And anyways, from there, I remember going home that night and just saying, man, I got 2 choices. I was 16 years old. I was like, I can even prove this guy wrong and really change my life, or continue down the path I'm on. And so went home, started Googling how to lose weight, how to get faster, all that. Ended up losing 70 pounds. And long story short, went on to play Division I baseball at Coastal Carolina University. Fell in love with fitness and really what it does for you from a mental standpoint, but also the opportunities that it gives you in really every aspect of life. And so directly after playing college ball, opened my own spot, and 2013 started ISI, and then in 2019 opened several corporate locations. 2019 made the move from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to Charlotte, and built out our franchise prototype and went to market. And that's kind of how we landed today. And our first franchise opened 3 months before the pandemic hit. So it's perfect timing.
Perfect timing for a fitness brand.
Yeah, it was awesome. But no, we've grown substantially the past couple of years. It's been a blessing. So
it's awesome. So first of all, let's start off with, what does ISI stand for? I know there's some significance to the name there. So can you tell us about that and how you came up with that?
Yeah. So in the first, when I graduated, I opened this little small personal training studio. I called it Beachbody Fitness. Like, I'm 21. I don't know anything about trademarks. Right. So anyways, I get a letter in the mail about 1.5 years later saying you have to cease and assist this big company called Beachbody Fitness, as you guys may know, like P90X, Insanity, and all that. And so we had to change the name. And that was right at the time. At that point in time, I actually owned a sports bar, a limo business, and a marketing agency. So I'm the 23-year-old now that, just has his hands everywhere. But wanted to get out all of those and really focus on fitness. And that's really where my passion was. So we rebranded. I was in church and with my wife, and the sermon was on Proverbs 27:17, which is iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. And just from being an athlete, just the level of accountability and who we surround ourselves with, we rise really to the ceiling of the people that, that we surround ourselves with. And so no better motto to create a community-based fitness concept than around that idea. And that's really where that came from, and what ISI stands for is Iron Sharpens Iron.
That's an awesome sharing that. Well, I was curious, we now understand the name, which is an awesome name. I mean, it's, a lot of people, they just willy-nilly make a name. And it sounds like you did that in your first business. I made that same mistake. I actually remember I had a business called Next Promotions, and it was we staffed promotional brand ambassadors for events, and it was out actually in LA in Beverly Hills. We rented this Regis office, and I was so excited to start. And then there's a Real Next Models that came and did the same thing. I got a cease and desist letter unintentionally.
Yeah, so, right.
I guess we've all been there in our entrepreneurship journey. Well, I guess my question is, you guys have just been on a growth trajectory. What's the goal 5 years from now? A lot of our listeners, they're looking at franchise, they're trying to figure out where to go. I always say, you got to look toward the leader and their vision. What's the vision for ISI over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so our 10 years, so our 10 years start very macros to be at 1,500 locations globally. So want to start with that and then back ourselves into, by 2025, we want to be at 400 locations awarded or in development, which we're on pace to do right now. But that's really the vision, is being a lifestyle brand. So over 90% of our members are on our unlimited membership, which is very different than other boutique concepts where it's modality driven to maybe a piece of equipment, a treadmill, a bike, or whatever. And they're coming there once a week, twice a week. Our members are coming 4, 5, 6 days a week, and therefore really creating a number one, a raving fan, but they're doing life with these people every single day. So then therefore the lifetime value of that member goes up substantially. It's why we were successful through COVID, is that our modality is coaching. We can do coaching in a parking lot. We can do coaching virtually, whatever we have to do. And so that's really the ultimate vision, is to do that and to create a platform that really brings people together of different backgrounds, different diversities, and with one goal, it's to get better, right, through the vehicle of fitness, and to do life together. And so it's really, what we're trying to do. And I think we're well on our way. I think the cool part is how it's resonating in all parts of the country, because when you go to market, you don't know, right? Like, is this just going to be a Bible Belt thing that's successful in the suburbia America, or is this something that's going to be successful in urban markets and markets that are heavy Indian? Like our location we just opened in Raleigh, I think over 50% of our members are from the Middle East. So it's cool to see how that's resonating across different diversities and ethnicities.
So let's talk about that for a second. You mentioned that it's a lifestyle business for a lot of your owners, and my question was, I see out there, man, you're traveling, you're at franchisees. I think you were seeing almost every franchisee, or if you already did that, or you're on that current plan. You're on social media, you're doing podcasts, you're running the company. And then you've got a whole full family life. I follow you on Instagram. You have it seems like you really keep everything balanced. How do you juggle? As a founder and CEO of a company, how are you balancing the business that you're growing and your life?
Yeah, I think it's challenging, but it's intentional. And I think hiring. So one thing that I did early on was I said I'm willing to really delay gratification, delay profitability of the company, to really bring on a strong foundation of people. And one thing that call it a fear of mine, or call it, I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's fair for our franchise partners to go through the growing pains of an emerging brand when they're essentially coming on and taking a risk on us, but also, paying a premium for a franchise fee that they're going to be paying in brands with 300-400 units. And so, it was important to me to bring on the experience and not really try and build the plane in the sky. And so our COO, Amanda Hall, really runs the operations of the company. And without her, I wouldn't be able to have any balance, right? And so, not only is she a great leader, but she also has a ton of experience in bringing other brands from 17, another fitness concept from 17 to 270 locations. So bringing people on that are going to help collapse the timeline and really support our franchise partners, because I don't know everything, and I don't know a lot, to be honest with you. So I do know though that you need great people in a village to make anything happen. So that's really what my focus on is the people that we're bringing onto the team and making sure that they're experienced, they align with our values, and they're going to be able to afford me the opportunity to really be, a balanced CEO, to be able to take my health for granted, or to not take it for granted, to be a good family man, to be a good husband, but also to be a great leader for them as well. So it's really how I attempt to do it.
Makes sense. I mean, delegation really is the name of the game. That's why I like the book Traction so much. I'm sure we've all heard about that, and the EOS model, because if every decision has to go through you, then you don't really have much of a business. You kind of have the job owns you. You don't own the job or own the business. I guess the business owns you.
Yeah.
And so being able to have that infrastructure in place is critical. And so one thing I wanted to ask about, so it sounds like you're the visionary, your COO, she's the integrator that can really, get it all done. I know that with any brick and mortar concept, obviously, if the concept is good, which ISI absolutely is, you can, it's easy to sell a great concept. But then the other half of the battle with the gym, especially, is getting them open. So how have you guys been able to effectively do that, especially with, because the real estate component can be difficult, and that's a tough thing to manage. So what's your guys' success there, and your secret?
Yeah. So, through COVID and everything, we were averaging getting locations open 12 months, which I think is a win. It's not during normal times where we'd like to be at. We really like to be in that 9 to 10 month mark, with pre-sales starting about 6 months from the time that they actually are executing a franchise agreement. But I think from that side, it's, having good partners on our side for real estate construction. And then also us really staying in tune of what's happening with construction and really what's happening in real estate, and staying ahead of it and working through, stuff that we can show our franchise partners. Hey, we really need to be paying attention to sound, attenuation, to, some of the things that, hey, they don't know what they don't know, right? This is the first time in business, in brick and mortar, especially, like, they don't know what to look for in some of these things. And so I think that's really the key is, we've now done this several times, and really staying transparent is a huge value of mine, of what they need to be looking for, and then coaching them and guiding them through different metrics and urgencies that they need to be really executing along the process. And so, that's one of our huge initiatives, is to get units open faster in 2022. And so that just feeds a fitness brand, because typically, like, for instance, today, 65% of our franchise partners were members first. So the more doors that we can open faster, the more members we're going to have in those new markets. Therefore, the quicker we're going to grow in those markets. And so, that's really the name of the game for us. Why we're highly motivated to get them open is it's a key part to our expansion plan as well. Yeah.
So it sounds like you don't just sell a franchise and say, "Hey, good luck, man.
No.
Find the real estate and get up and running."
No, we award it, and then we're like, "All right, you ready?"
We saw that today, even, right? You mentioned right before this, you were negotiating for one of your franchisees.
Yeah. So I think it's important to get involved as a CEO, to really get involved when needed, especially when it comes down to brand credibility, brand presence, and brand vision, to get some things across the line. Just step in and help them.
So we were going to ask you who were the best hires you ever made, but I think you answered that question. It sounds like your COO, Amanda.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, here's the thing is, like, a lot of people don't give credit to those people who were there from day one. And, that may not be in your organization today. And the reality is that without them, maybe they didn't have the capacity to grow with you at the speed, but they were so critical to the mission, for that season of the business. And so, I think every member, every staff member, every employee that we've ever had has played a part in where we're at today. And, I think the same goes for where we're going. So, it's vision is one thing, but then your team and your people, man, like, it's everything.
That's a real lesson, right? The idea of the right people in the right seats on the bus. And I've I've been on both ends now, where, someone you're close with, maybe even a good friend, they're not the right fit for your company on the bus. I've been that where I'm not the right fit because maybe it's my entrepreneurship. I want to go on my own. Like, you need someone that wants to build your company. And sometimes people can want to be on their own. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they're not a fit for your bus then, right? They're probably a better fit for their own bus. So you got all kinds of different, that's the hardest part though, because it's the people that you started with sometimes and you're so close with that you lose sometimes.
Sometimes the people you start with, they can take you from 0 to X amount of revenue, but then what's going to get you to go from that to the next big hurdle and hop over the next big obstacle is a completely different team. And sometimes you need different people in different seats. I know I think about like O2E brands and Cameron Harold with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, Brian Scudamore. Cameron Harold is a beast, but even Brian Scudamore, they got to a point where he said, look, you got us here, but we need something completely different to get from here to there. And so there's no knock on Cameron, obviously, because he's a genius. But just sometimes the needs of the business are different throughout different periods of time as the business grows and scales.
Yeah. There's multiple stages. You got the zero to million stage, and then you got the 1 to 10 million stage, the 10 to 50 million, and the 50 million plus. And, your leadership needs to be different skill sets within that time, right? At one point, it needs to be someone who can execute. At another time, it needs to be someone who can innovate. And so, it's so critical. I think I talk about this a lot with other executives and, even our franchise partners is, how do you keep great people is you have to know their vision. And, if their vision, your vision as a leader has to be so big that your team's vision fits inside if you want to keep them. And it's either, if you have, for instance, our franchise partners, if you have one location and you only want to open one location, totally cool. Right. But your top employee is going to be a stepping stone. You might have a 2 to 3 year lifespan with them, and that's totally fine. They're not going to be there in 10 years, and nor should you want them there in 10 years, right? Unless they're, because it means they're not growing in their career. And so I think that's important for people to really understand, is to know the vision of your team so that you can create pathways for them inside your company. And therefore there's not a ceiling, because we get so many people from other brands because they've essentially reached a ceiling. And at some point every brand has that, but I think that's the battle, is really trying to create pathways the entire way through.
I was just thinking about that, the movie, the show on Showtime, Super Pumped. I don't know if you've seen it. It's about Uber and the story of Uber. It's really good. I don't condone what Travis Cabernet, the negative that happened with Uber, but when you watch it, you watch this person this founder of Uber who truly executed, and he's gritty, and he says no to people that you blown away that he's saying no to get, it's Google's offering to invest, and he's saying no to get them to end up investing more. And he's relentless. But all the positives about him to get them to where they got first without him ended up being his negatives too, and his downfall. And the company actually needed to move on. He wasn't the right fit for the bus anymore. So that can happen too. The company's bigger than you.
For sure. 100%.
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned about keeping good talent. And we were going to ask about, how do you find a good general manager? Because ISI can be run as a semi-absentee business, obviously not absentee. There's no such thing as that. You can't just not be involved in the business, but you can hire a general manager. That person can run a lot of the day-to-day operation. But like you mentioned, if you want to keep that person long-term, you need to show that there's a growth path. You need to show, hey, I want to go from one location, then we're going to open up a second, a third, and on and on. And it's like you said, it's cool if they just want to stick at 1 or 2, but just recognize that the opportunity for your team then is capped, and they're not going to stay there forever then, because they want growth opportunity and career advancement potential too. So, but the question is, so how do you go about, or how do you train your franchisees to go about finding that good general manager that is the right fit for the brand, the right person for the right seat, especially right out of the gate with the franchise?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's the most important role, right? I think it heavily depends on what is the vision of that franchise partner. And I always tell people when they're coming through the sales process is, hey, like, that's why I essentially demand a vision out of them, because I was like, I can't help you or educate you on what you should do, whether it's 1, 3, or 5 units, because I need to know your vision. And so I do say, though, if you're on the borderline of, say, 2 and 3 units, then let's go 3, because of this one reason. You're going to be able to attract better talent because there is a proven growth pattern or growth pathway for your team, right? Because that first person you're going to bring on is like, hey, I've purchased 3 of these territories and I'm going to need a regional at one point. And so I think that's one thing. Number 2 is, how involved is that franchise partner going to be? And what are they going to be doing within the business? Because they need to really lock in on that. Once they fully understand, like, hey, I'm going to be semi-absentee and I'm going to work out there for us, work out there. And, we're going to have our weekly meetings and that's it. Cool. Then you need somebody who's going to offset your skill set. Meaning, like, for me, I don't know if you guys have ever dug into the Enneagram at all, or personality tests or anything like that. But the Enneagram really dials in, like, I'm a type 7. So I'm a visionary. I am somebody who really goes from A to B. I don't like talking. Like, I don't like that period. Like, let's just get the job done, right? And therefore, like, I'm not super detail oriented. And so that's who I would need to hire, is somebody who's very detail oriented. And then that person, though, who's your assistant GM or maybe your top sales leader or top front desk associate, based depending on business, right, is going to offset the skill set of your general manager. Because it's so hard, where people try and find unicorns, like, you're going to find one unicorn for every million people that are detail oriented, visionary, can build community, can be charismatic. Like, it just don't exist. And so, that's really what you need to hire, is to, how involved are you going to be, and then hire those skill sets or what you don't like to do, right? Like, I hate the details. I hate paperwork. I hate administrative stuff. So I need to hire on the Enneagram a type 1 who's a perfectionist. And then they need to make sure that they're hiring type 7s, which are more like me, which are more charismatic, which are more community people, extroverted, those types of people. So I think not a lot of owners really dive into that, and they just see, okay, who's available out there. And it doesn't matter what business it is. Like, that's I think super critical to that.
Where do we find this Enneagram? Is it what is it?
Yeah, just Google it. Enneagram. It's don't, like, be careful with it though, because you will go down a rabbit hole. Like, it is fascinating because, like, so personality, like disc assessment tests, that's going to say your personality more than anything, but this goes into your DNA. So it'll tell you, okay, you're a type 7, but then it'll say, hey, Christian, if you're a type 7, when you're really healthy, meaning physically, emotionally, spiritually, you're going to take on the characteristics of a type blank. And when you're not healthy, when you're super stressed out, when you're, overwhelmed, you're going to take on the characteristics of the negative characteristics of this other type. And so, like, for me, my unhealthiness is my 7 turns into a 1. So I get very, like, focused, but in a bad way, and one track minded and micromanage and all of that, to where that's not me when I'm healthy. And so it's
under stress, you flip, like you have this. Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah. Be careful though, because you'll go down a freaking rabbit hole. And then, like, relationship with your significant other, it'll teach you how to communicate with them in a huge way. And it'll it's wild, man. I know I'm gonna get a text from you. Yeah, I know I'm gonna get a text from you, like, in a week and be like, dude, I'm gonna cheat code to your wife. Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine I'm on that 7 side, like you, but I'm curious to see what I get. I actually am blind to details. It's not even that, like, people say to me, like, be more detail oriented. I always equate it to, you meet someone that's interested. All 3 of us on this call are have charisma and extroverted.
Yep.
When I meet someone that isn't, I just want to say to them, like, just talk, why don't you just be charismatic? And they can't. It's not their skill set. And so when someone who's very detail oriented gets mad at me, they act like it's like I'm choosing to be lazy, or it's not that. It's actually, we have a blinder probably. And while we have clear vision in somewhere else, there's some type of fog in the way of details, at least for me.
Yeah. And what's interesting is you, without even noticing it, you attract people that are in the same Enneagram type as you. So now you can easily build an organization that is just built on people that are replicated just like you. And all of a sudden you guys are missing details. There's gaps in everything. Or if you're a type 1, or somebody who is just very detail oriented, you're going to hire other people that are like that when you really need somebody who's charismatic or somebody who is a driver, which is more of a type 8 that's going to drive people to get things done. So it's fascinating. Thank you.
So how do you identify those people? Is this part of your hiring process? You're like, hey, take this assessment, or what do you do? How do you identify that person? If you're a type 7, how do you identify the people that are going to cover those blind spots? Or that
it sounds like it was part of his dating process too, before, when he met his wife. I don't know.
I wish. No. But hey, if it was today though, I would put it like the link on like, I wasn't even around when there was dating sites, but like, what is it? Bumble or whatever.
Yeah,
I'd be putting the link to the Enneagram. Yeah. But no, it's not part of our onboarding process here. But I do encourage franchise partners to, number 1, take the test, and number 2, if they're close with 2 or 3 different candidates, then to have them take the test. Because there's nothing wrong with it. And sometimes you just need somebody who's opposite of, because those skill sets are both, and especially in fitness, like it's incredible that you have to have both of those sides. If you miss one side, then you're missing a whole gap to your business. And it's like that for any business though, right?
Absolutely. So what sort of gaps does that create? I mean, let's say you have the visionary type person who's charismatic, knows how to build a community, but they don't have the detail, versus the guy that's super analytical, can do the detail, but maybe his management style is a little weird. I mean, what kind of gaps do you find that can create in a business? Some of the answers I'm obvious, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that.
I mean, I think it really relies down to what is your consumer. So like in fitness, you're going to be able to survive as a type 7 who's not detail oriented, because it's about human to human interaction. It's about, word of mouth, referrals, and all of that. Where a 7 is going to drop the ball is maybe on KPI tracking, is on, all of the details of what needs to happen on a weekly basis, opening and closing lists. Because type 7s are really bad managers, great leaders though. And there's a difference there. To where like a type 1, and like you have a type 2. So like my assistant is a type 2, and she is one of those people that naturally, like, it makes sense. Like she loves to serve. But unhealthy type 2s would be like, it's that friend that you have that is always there for everybody, but then like you forget their birthday and they're like, man, I've done everything for you. And now there's this massive level of resentment. And so it's just, you gain awareness to that. And so, based on like, if you're in a tech company, I would say, it's less important to have a charismatic person and more important to have a detail oriented person. Or if you're in a painting company. So I think it's very different for each industry, but the bigger picture here is, I think, having awareness to that, and ultimately it links down to freedom, right? And that's why the people you guys work with, the people that I work with, like, that's what we're after is financial freedom, but also freedom of their time. And you can't do that if you continue to hire people that are just like you, because you're not going to be able to complement their skill set. And that's ultimately what it should be, is you should be able to see your team's gaps, so that you can, say, hey, for instance, if you're very detail oriented and it's KPIs, like, hey, we're having a weekly meeting. But if you're just hiring people like you, like, you're almost buying yourself a job at that point. So.
What's your best advice then for people to get along with different personality types? Because obviously there's all different types of people that you could be working with, and you need to be good at dealing with a large variety of people, especially if you want to have the type of organization that you're talking about, where you have different personality types to make sure all the bases are covered, the business is flourishing, it's growing, nothing's getting left behind, there's no gaps getting created. So what's your advice for getting along with different people? Because sometimes, like Dan had mentioned, if he's super, not detail oriented, then it can be easy for people that are to get frustrated with him. And then if people that are not super charismatic and don't have a ton of great people skills, it could be easier for Dan to get frustrated. So what's your advice for how to manage and navigate those types of relationships, especially as a franchisee?
Yeah, from the franchisee's perspective, I think it's number one, it's mission, vision, values, right? So why did we open this location? Like, why do we even exist? And then number two, like if this is what I always tell people when they're hiring somebody, if there is one value out of say we have 5 values as a company that doesn't align, do not hire them. Just do not hire them, because that at some point, if everybody on your team has to align with the values, if you align on the values, then you can get past anything. And then they need to know the vision, right? And that's why I tell franchise partners, like, hey, your vision is to be part of a brand that's growing to 1,500 locations, but that's not your vision. Like your vision is 5 locations so that you can create massive opportunity for employees and all of that. Mm-hmm. But your team needs to know that vision, because there's an old proverb that says where there is no vision, people will perish, which means people will die when there's no vision. And we've all been there, right? To where, why am I coming and waking up every single day to do the same thing? Because that vision should pull you. And then I think lastly, it's empathy, and it's knowing like, hey, like I don't have this skill set, or this person, if I know my employee lacks this skill set, and as a leader, like it's my job to help them develop it or drop my expectations of them in that one particular area. And it gets back to what you're saying, putting people in the right seat. It's like me putting an introvert in sales, like probably not, of course, like they're not going to succeed. I'm going to be frustrated. They're going to be frustrated. They're not going to be fulfilled, and they're ultimately going to suck. So in our industry, right? And I say sales in our industry, when you're people facing in a high energy atmosphere, but I think that's the key piece. And you just have to have awareness to who you're hiring and what their skill sets are, because too many of us, I think we expect too much out of people, like, and especially founders, high level performers, like not everyone is us. And like, we also suck in 95% of every other area. Right. And I think that's,
this is like facts, just constant. I have a whole thing of notes here that I'm taking, because I had this recent revelation, like my company is all salespeople. Even the managers, the operations people were salespeople. We moved into operations, like the whole thing. And then one day I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This is just a bunch of salespeople. And we had to start figuring that out and hiring operations people. And sometimes I think operations people, they want to be the salesperson. So they say, no, I'm not just an ops person, I'm a salesperson. Maybe they're not. And vice versa. Salespeople think they're an ops person and they're really not. I'm guilty of that.
Right.
You got to really be self-aware.
Sales, yeah, just because you can do sales doesn't mean you can do sales management necessarily. Sales skills, management skills, operational skills, those are all different. And sometimes there can be some crossover, but not all the time.
I didn't know that there's a leader and a manager. That's a great point too. So we're summarizing this call here for our listeners.
Well, I guess a cool place to wrap up. Or Adam, did you have something to say? No.
I think it's all great. It's the reality is we all are good and we all suck. So the more awareness we can have around where we are good and where we suck, and the people that we work closely with is, at the end of the day, is going to make us all more successful. Because I heard, I think Hormozy said it the other day on one of his Instagram stories, but he said, because people always say, and this just resonated with me. People are like, I love him because he's authentic, or, my goal is to be authentic. Well, like, what does authenticity mean? And you do it, because there's no formula. And then he actually said, when your thoughts align with your words, align with your actions, that's authenticity. And it never rang a bell, because again, there's a lot of people that think certain things, insecurities, fears, all these things, but then their insecurities speak out through confidence, or they're covering that up. And therefore they look, I can probably name 4 people I know very closely to me who seem charismatic, but they bleed that they're unauthentic. And it's because their thoughts in their mind is not the same of what they're living out. because they are insecure, they do have a fear or whatever it is, but they're good at covering that up. And I think that, like, to me, is when we can be authentic, man, like, you unlock so many gates in whatever level of leadership or management you're in through that. So
I love that. Well, I think one quick question I wanted to ask before we wrap up. I know we're bumping up against the hour here, but where do you see the fitness industry going in the future? Obviously, it seems like we're finally getting out of COVID. Obviously, for the fitness industry, that was a tough place to be. You guys weathered the storm. You're rocking and rolling. Where do things go from here as an industry? And we already talked about ISI, but where do you think things are going? And what would you say to some people that they're like, I like the idea of fitness, but I'm a little nervous because of COVID and all of that. What would you say to those people? And we can wrap up there.
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's probably one of the things that I hear the most is, man, it's so concentrated, right? There's so many people that are in fitness, and it's true. But what's also true is there's a reason there's so many people in fitness, is because it's going to be a $100 billion industry. And number three is, you don't need 3,000 people to be successful. And so there's room for everybody to win when it comes down to fitness. And, where one of you guys may love cycling and maybe cycle bar is your cup of tea, and the other guy is more athletic based training and ISI is your cup of tea. Like, there's room for everybody to win. So I think the big unknown through COVID was, how much market share is the at home, concept's going to take. And the reality is, I mean, you guys see what happens with Peloton, with the stock there. And the reality is, people need people, and we're meant to do life together. And so I think the brands in the boutique space that are going to deliver the quality of experience, regardless of modality, that it's worth someone getting out of their house, driving 20 minutes, taking a workout, driving 20 minutes back home, are going to be the brands that are going to thrive. And we're going to see a lot of brands die in the next 2 to 3 years. And so I do think you're going to see the at-home stuff, the Pelotons, the Tonals, all of that take a little bit of market share. But I also think you're going to see a lot of boutique fitness brands die, because they're delivering the same level of workout that you could get at home. And when I talk experience, it's about high fives, it's about community, it's about connecting with people that they can't ever get through a screen. So I think that's where we're, selfishly, that's where we're positioned really, really well right now. Is we're ready for the next 3 or 4 years. But that's kind of what I see is, boutique fitness survived and we're up well over 100% pre-COVID numbers right now in all of our locations. So any indication of that, and I don't think it's just us, right? I think it's the industry. I know OTF, Exponential Brands, they're getting back on their feet. And so I think it's here to stay. And this was really COVID was the first true test of that. For the boutique fitness space, since it really exploded in 2013, 2014, and 15.
Awesome. Wealth of knowledge, Adam. Thank you for being on with us, and excited to continue this journey together.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, guys. I appreciate y'all.